Welcome to the best Battlefield 6 settings guide. Turn on your console and PC, sit back, relax, and follow along. First up, we're going to change the controller settings. Click on controller, click edit settings, and then click edit. Infantry aim sensitivity is your hipfire sensitivity. 30 to 50 is going to be fine for most players. I personally use 100. You can change to inverted here if you wish. Field of view is the FOV, basically the observable world in front of you. The higher the FOV, the more peripheral vision you have. The lower the FOV, the less you have. At higher values, targets are much more difficult to track and see at longer ranges. At lower values, you do lose that peripheral vision, but longer range targets are much more visible and easier to track. I would recommend somewhere between 100 and 110. On the right here, you can see the horizontal values, so you can convert this if you are coming from previous Battlefields or other titles. I would recommend leaving the vertical aim ratio alone. At 100%, the crosshair moves the same distance when aiming vertically as horizontally. Lower values dampen vertical input for finer control. Leave this on default unless you really know what you're doing here. You can change the vertical zoom ratio here as well, as long as you turn off the uniform infantry aiming. I would not recommend doing this. Basically, with uniform infantry aiming on, your sights all feel the same in terms of sensitivity. So if you turn 90 degrees with a pistol, for example, and then did the same with a 6x sniper scope, they would feel the same in terms of sensitivity. This is very important for keeping your aim consistent and tracking targets really well. There is also a zoom sensitivity coefficient tied to this. 178 is going to be fine for most players. Unless you really know what you're doing, leave this alone. 0 might be worth trying as well. You might be surprised at how good it feels. Infantry aim assist is the standard aim assist. Now these two are different from the beta. Until they put those default values in, I would recommend changing these down to 70 to 80 at most. Aim assist is your standard aim assist, and slow down is when it slows your sensitivity while on target. Zoom snap is where it snaps for you. Personally, I like this on 0. Leave it on default if you're a new player. You can change the infantry aim input curve here for finer control. Standard works for me. If you are coming from previous Battlefield games, you can have the exact settings here as well, and there is also a linear option if you want one-to-one aiming. Personally, I would recommend standard. Again, if you did turn off uniform aiming here, there is an option going to be available for you, which is infantry zoom aim input curve. Use the same as the previous value. I would highly recommend you turn off acceleration here, unless you really want acceleration on your aiming here. You can set this to previous Battlefield titles values. I would recommend standard, and I would also recommend turning off aiming left-right acceleration. If you do use this in other games, maybe setting it to 20 should work for you. There is various movement options here. I use toggle on the infantry sprint. Most of these though are going to be personal preference. As for zoom, I like to hold that and also hold for steady scope. We are going to change the zoom here, so ignore that, and we'll change those values later. Now the infantry zoom aim sensitivity, this is your sensitivity while ADS or aiming down sight. Remember here, 100 is 100% of your hipfire sensitivity. So if you wanted your ADS to be half the speed of your hipfire, you would set this to 50. I hope that makes sense. If you did turn off uniform aiming here, you'll have this option for zoom transition sensitivity smoothing. Now, if you did turn on uniform aiming as well, you want to leave these on 100, so all sights feel the same in terms of sensitivity. These options here are mainly personal preference once again. As for the interact and reload, I would set interact to tap and reload to hold. Very easy to use, very helpful. Mount breakouts, you want this on instant, so as soon as you come out of a mount, it's instant and you can go and fight other enemies. You can change the mount type or disable it if you don't want this in the game at all, and there is other options for the peak type as well. Motion sensor aim options here if you use these. There is a new feature to instantly flick around in this game. Personally, I am not going to be using it, but there is some options here if you want to change them, and you may as well just set it to the max values. Highly recommend you set the buttons here to alternate. Basically, right analog becomes your crouch and circle becomes takedown or melee. This will make it much easier to crouch and slide in the middle of a fight. You don't want to be using circle. Below here, you can adjust the infantry passenger control mapping if you wish. You can skip over this part if you don't want to do that. I personally like to flip the triggers, so this is how you do it if you want to do it as well. For Comoros, you set this to L2 or the back trigger. You set the grenade to R2 or the back trigger on the right side. Find the fire button, set that to R1, find the zoom and set that to L1 as well. And there you go, your triggers are flipped. Now I'm not going to go through every single vehicle setting here. Ideally, you want to fire up a private server and test this out yourself if you're very new to the game. I will recommend some options here that are universal though. You want to click edit. Vehicle aim sensitivity of 50 should be fine for most players. You can invert the options here as well. You can change the sensitivity of the gunners. You can do the vertical aim ratios. Again, use your infantry values here. Same for the uniform vehicle aiming and everything else here as well. Just use the same values unless you really know what you're doing. You do want to change some of these movement options here. Some of them can be quite confusing, so I'm going to display them on screen right now so you can see how it works. Check out the option here for decouple tank turret aiming from turning and the vehicle aim relative controls. Decouple tank turret is really important, and vehicle aim relative controls as well. Basically, when on, the vehicle moves relative to camera aim. When off, the vehicle moves relative to where it's facing. Use the option that makes the most sense to you. Again, use similar values to the infantry sections here. So you want to copy those settings to the transport vehicles if you want to do that right now. If not, don't worry about it. You can change that later. As for the aircraft, we'll go over a few settings here. Invert personal preference. I'd recommend leaving the aircraft control sensitivity to default values unless you know what you're doing. You may want to adjust the third-person aircraft camera roll. I've got that on screen right now so you can see it off and on and see which one makes the most sense to you. And again, there's various options here for the vehicles, the aircraft vehicles as well. I'm not going to go through all of these. They are pretty self-explanatory, and you just want to basically copy and paste your settings to each of these here. Right at the bottom though, there is some options for the UI control mapping. You can change these if you wish. Personally, I use default values. And then of course, also at the bottom is this controller tuning option, which is really important. Highly recommend you turn off controller vibration. It does affect your aim. Various options here if you do decide to leave that on. Highly recommend you turn down the dead zones on the sticks here. Basically, the lower the dead zone, the more sensitive your controller is, the more responsive it is, and your aim is going to feel really snappy. You don't want it too low, but you do want to lower it. I would recommend somewhere between 8 and 13. Personally, I'm using 8 right now. Same again for both sticks. Also, there is the actual dead zone. Now this used to be set to 15. They changed it down to 6. Personally, I think that's a bit overkill. I would recommend setting this to 15 and you should be totally fine. Unless you really know what you're doing here, I would not recommend other values. Same for the max input threshold on both of these sticks. Now you do want to drop these values all the way down to the lowest. These change how much L2 needs to be pulled to produce max input. You want to be throwing your grenades, aiming down sight, whatever it may be, as soon as possible, so set this down to the lowest values. If you are using mouse and keyboard, there is various options here. You have the mouse movement distances for 360-degree rotations on the right there. I'm sure if you do use mouse, you know exactly what you're doing here. If you don't, try the default values and then go from there. Again, mouse players, I'm sure you know what you're doing here. You play other games on mouse, so you can just copy and paste those settings here as well. One setting you do want to make sure is right at the bottom here, mouse raw input is turned on. Now for the graphic settings here, if you are on a PS5 Pro, set this to performance mode to go 120 Hz and get the most out of your console. As for world brightness, I would recommend somewhere between 50 and 60. Same for the UI brightness and same for the sharpness. We adjusted field of view options here, so you should not have to change those. Recommend turning down the weapon motion blur and world motion blur down to 0. You don't really need those. Set the camera shake amount to the lowest here. Less shake is always better, especially when aiming. You can reduce sprint camera bobbing here by setting this to on. Highly recommend you do that. And you can turn off these options here. Highly unnecessary. You can turn off the HUD here if you don't want to see it. Don't know why you would, but there is various filters here as well. There is an interesting option here that I'm just having a little play with. This is the Sovis filter here. I'm going to be playing with this Sovis filter on stream very shortly, so I will come back and give my recommendations here, but have a little play with this on and off. See which makes soldiers appear a little better. You can change advanced HUD settings here as well if you wish. Honestly, default values are mostly going to be fine. You can change the view distance on foot. You might want to adjust that a little bit, just a little bit, and there is of course many more options down below. Most of these honestly are personal preference. Leave on default values if you don't know what you're doing. As for the icons and indicators here, you can adjust these if you wish. Personally, I'm not going to change all of these things here apart from the zoomed sections here. So basically, objective icons opacity while zoomed. That means while you're aiming down sight, the icons will fade away. Just fade away just a little bit. This can be really helpful. Highly recommend you do this on various options on the zoom settings here. Not the rest unless you know what you're doing. And of course, you want to leave the enemy icons opacity zoomed to 100. So while you aim down sight, you see all of those perfectly clear. Now, the crosshairs are really important. This is going to improve your gameplay massively. Recommend you change your crosshair color. I like a bright green and a purpley sometimes, a bit of a red, a bright blue as well. Mostly personal preference with that, but start off with a bright green and you should be fine. You can change the thickness of the crosshair here if you wish, and I would recommend you turn off the infantry crosshair projection here. When this is turned off, the crosshair is static and always aligned with the center of the screen, making tracking targets and aiming more consistent. You can change the opacity of the hit indicators here, but personally I would leave these alone. Opacity here is up to you, but these are really important. Changing these is going to speed up your gameplay massively as well. So basically, I've got a color scheme here. Blue for hits, red for headshots, green for kills. So basically, I see blue, I've done normal damage. If I see red, I know I might not need another headshot. I could just do a body shot. And if I see green, I can snap to a new target, speeding up my gameplay. I like to go yellow and orange for the armor soft and hard hit indicators. Leave armor broken hit indicator on as well. You can turn off the hit indicator numbers here if you wish and change those. Personally, default values should be fine. Some damage indicators here for random damage around the map as well. Turn off the chat here if you don't need that, and there is some chat settings as well if you want to tweak it further. Default values should be fine. When it comes to audio, leave the master volume at 100, sound effects at 100 as well. Turn down or even turn off the music if you don't want that. You might want to turn down the commander voiceover volume just a little bit. 80 should be fine. Again, soldier and campaign VO about 85 for me, and I'm going to leave the UI SFX volume on 100 for now. Turn off the hit indicators if you don't want that, and turn off the controller speaker volume as well. You can set the sound system here if you wish. Personally, I would just leave it on stereo or even go all the way over to 3D headphones. I find I hear more footsteps on that setting. Highly recommend you set this to war tapes. Default is fine. Night mode is good for hearing footsteps and at night, of course. But war tapes, either of these are insane. If you want this game to feel more real, war tapes is the way to go, and you'll hear more footsteps as well. You can turn off voice chat if you'd like to. I like to turn it off, and there is some accessibility options here if you need them as well. If you are a streamer, I would recommend turning off enable radio music. You don't want any copyrighted music playing when you're streaming. As for system settings, make sure crossplay is enabled. If you turn it off and you're on console, you will be stuck with that particular console platform. There is no crossplay only between Xbox and PlayStation. Turn off show player created content if you don't want to see any of that. There is streamer mode, anonymous mode here if you need this. Turn off enable radio music if you are a streamer. Minimap settings there if you want. Turn off gameplay data sharing if you don't want to share anything with third-party websites. Turn on the scoreboard ping so you can see your connection quality on the scoreboard. VoIP stats here and network graph options as well. If you're ever having any laggy issues or anything like that, turn these on and record your gameplay and send it in to EA or anyone who could help you. Some brief campaign options here. I played it on hardcore, so I'm using that. And again, some tutorials and subtitle options as well. When it comes to the gameplay tab, most of this should be set to what we set earlier on the controller. Change this again if you really need to, but it should all be standard and exactly what we set. You shouldn't have to change anything over here. There is some accessibility options if you need them. Menu narration I leave off, subtitles on for the campaign. We changed master volumes here as well and all of these. If you are colorblind, there is some colorblind options here if you wish to change them, or you could just set a custom color scheme if you want to. Again, we changed most of these options here, so we shouldn't have to do it again. If they haven't been changed, unfortunately, you will have to go through these, but it should be all fine and good to go. Now, if you are playing on PlayStation, there is some options here you want to adjust. Head on down to Accessories, click Controller General, and make sure USB cable is the communication method for your controller. On the screen and video settings, make sure to set the resolution to the highest available on the monitor you are using. Scroll all the way down here, turn on VRR if your monitor supports it, set 120Hz output to automatic if your monitor supports it as well. This will feel nice and silky and your aim will feel really good. Highly recommend. Turn on these options as well if you know what you're doing. I personally don't play in HDR, so I don't have that, and I leave these on automatic values. There should be some similar options for Xbox as well. And of course, on the network tab, make sure you are playing over a wired connection. You'll have a more stable experience and have better time dealing against out-of-region players. Here we are going to talk about PC-specific settings. So if you're on PC, you want to sit back, relax, and check these out as well. So performance preset, I'm using custom, graphics quality custom here. We're going to edit the settings. Most of these on the right side, they tell you exactly what they do. If you've been playing PC games for a long time, I'm sure you've seen these options many times again. Personally, I'm using high right now. I'm on a 5090, so I can pretty much run whatever I need here, but I probably will adjust to low to medium on most of these later on. Right now, I just want the game looking good for streams, but honestly, you should be good with most of these settings. Do not recommend setting it to high or overkill if you're not on a decent, more recent GPU. So, a couple of these settings you might want to change. Mesh quality, that doesn't need to be so high. Terrain, undergrowth, you could drop these, make it a little bit easier to see targets in various areas. Same with the effects quality, volumetric quality. You don't need it to look that good. I would drop some of these down just a little bit. Shadows especially, don't really need these, and that should be good to go. Post-process quality, I like to leave this on high. You know, actually, I'm going to set it to low. Yeah, I'm going to adjust it for this one. Screen space, AO, and GI, I would set this to off if you want your game to run nice, crispy, responsive, and smooth. But if you want it to look a little prettier, you know, GTA low or high should be good to go. High fidelity objects amount, I'm going to drop that down to low. And that's pretty much me done. All of these settings here we discussed earlier in the controller section. So just hover on over, click FOV options down below and you'll see those. Make sure full screen mode is set to full screen exclusive or borderless if you use that. Your main monitor, your maximum resolution, your highest refresh rate. Make sure vertical sync is off. You do not want this on. Your aim inputs will feel laggy. Definitely do not recommend. Right click the desktop, go down to show more options and video control panel. You can turn up the digital vibrance. I set that to 70. Makes the colors pop a little bit more and you'll see targets in areas like grass a little bit more easily. These are my 3D settings. Unless you know what you're doing here, you want to leave these on default values or set them to the ones I'm using here. Power management mode, maximum performance while I'm playing games, and that's pretty much it. Also on changed resolution, make sure you're running at the highest of your monitor and the highest Hertz refresh rate as well. And on PC, that is pretty much it. Everything else is pretty much the same. So guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Do be sure to drop a like if you did. Make sure to subscribe if you are new. I make tutorials, tips, gameplays, and streams here on YouTube, and I hope to see you guys very soon. Thank you very much for watching. Take it easy, guys. Catch you later.